Have you found yourself wondering, is there something more? If so, then you, my friend, are a dreamer in waiting. I'd like to welcome you to the Dream On podcast. I'm Julia Gentry, and along with my husband, Travis Gentry, we discuss real, raw, and not small talk conversations about faith, family, entrepreneurship, and all the things that matter most in this life in order to help people bridge the gap between what they currently have and what they really want most. Join us as we give you insights, tools, and strategy to chase every dream that's on the inside of you. But be forewarned, this podcast is not for the faint of heart, but rather those of heart. This is the Dream On podcast.
Welcome to the Dream On podcast. I'm Travis Gentry.
And I'm Julia Gentry, his better half.
His other better half. His other half.
Welcome, you guys. We're really excited to be talking with you about your probably least favorite topic today. Really, let's be honest.
Sex.
Yes! Are we talking about sex?
Money.
Oh, okay.
The other topic that most people don't like to talk about.
We are excited because we get to talk about the thing that nobody wants to talk about. But I feel confident today that we are going to reframe this and we're going to give you an opportunity to unlearn what you think you know about money so you can actually learn the truth about money that will serve you.
Yes. And this can be a big topic.
Huge.
Like this is actually take 2 of this podcast because there's so many directions that we could go with it. And we just want to give you value and through our experiences. Mm-hmm. So there's 2 different experiences that we've had that I think a lot of people can relate to. Mm-hmm. The first experience is that you have no money. And all you want is money.
More. And
if you just had some money, then you'd be happy.
Yes,
if you had money, you'd be fulfilled.
And this is true because you would honestly say, this is how you know that you're in this group. And this is not about amount of money. Because this could be someone making $30,000 a year. This could be someone making $300,000 a year. Like this isn't about the amount. But generally you would find yourself saying, Julia, money can buy happiness, right? Because if I had a new car and a bigger house and more money in the bank, I promise you I would be happier. That's how you know you're in that group.
Yeah.
Because I would say that I will own that. I put things on my vision board 10 years ago that I would say anyone who says that money can't buy happiness has obviously never had it.
Yeah. And when you go to a restaurant, you order off the right side of the menu.
Oh, meaning the price.
The price.
Yeah.
And that's all you think about. Mm-hmm. Like we've been there where like literally we're scrounging for change to get a pizza or a bottle of wine back in the day, 10 plus years ago. And it was all we wanted was more money.
And I think the interesting thing about this is then every decision you make is about money.
Money.
Not having enough. I wish I had more. I mean, I legit, if we unpack that example you just gave, which like my life is flashing before my eyes, we literally, here's our word, you guys, would go to the liquor store with a bag of coins.
Like we would, because we would have different like jars or like in our pants pocket or coat or in the car whatever it was.
Yeah, when we were like living the dream, just trying to make a buck, so focused on just making more money, we would go to the liquor store because everybody knows we just at the end of a hard week, you need a drink. That's what we do. We would give them our bag of money. And I really think at some level they were like, oh, here comes the Gentrys. And we would put up our exact amount of money for that exact bottle of wine that didn't even taste good, but it was big enough and we could afford it. And
it was the cheapest wine they had and a $5 pizza.
Yeah. So I want to also speak to the emotional, spiritual, mental depression that can also create, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think you and I can also speak to, I grew up with parents who were divorced that were also tight on income, right? Like I remember people dropping off gifts on Christmas because we didn't have enough money. You know, I remember my mom would do her best to give me everything I wanted, but that also meant she sacrificed. And so there was also this whole upbringing that told me that, you know, just enough was just all you were going to have. Mm-hmm. And that somehow, right, it would just be there and just enough to be there to meet most of your needs and a few of your wants. And then that was it. So that was also, looking back, kind of familiar to me in a really weird way. Mm-hmm. It was normal to think that way. It was normal to spend that way. It was normal to act that way. It was normal. It's what I saw.
But that's what you saw with one side, because your parents are divorced.
Correct.
So that's what you saw with your mom, mostly.
Yep.
And then your dad was a little bit different, where he was grinding and working, and then he hit a certain point, I think he was 45-ish, and he was able to basically retire.
Yep. Which speaks to the other bucket. So let's speak to the other bucket. So then you're right, as I get older, I don't even know how old I was, but I was more in my teens. My dad was in an industry that did finally, after years and years and years of grinding, finally succeeded to the point that he made enough to retire at 45. And I watched him, and many of us, ourselves included, now jump to the other bucket, which was, okay, finally I can buy the house and the car and go on the trips, and I have the money in my bank account, and I have all of these things on paper that make me successful, and yet I'm not fulfilled. Then there's that.
Yep. And I grew up, and I want to talk about this because it's so important, because what you see modeled growing up has a huge impact on you.
Agreed.
And it can be something that you follow, or it could be something that you run from. And so you go to the extreme of like, well, I don't want that. And so how I grew up in a nice neighborhood, a great family, went to a good school, but we just didn't have extra money. I would say we were house poor. Like we had a great house, great neighborhood, but we didn't have any extra money.
And so let's also speak, when we say the word house poor, here's how we would define that. It would be, we have just enough to cover exactly what we spend.
Yep.
And some months, not enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like
more often than not, there's more month than money.
Yes.
And so looking at that and seeing that, and my parents did a great job. But that's what I saw modeled, as far as like, we had just enough, and we would get a little bit ahead, and then something would happen, and then they would get, behind. And so we didn't go on vacation. One of the first vacations I remember, like big vacations, was when I was in high school, which is absolutely, there again, it helped me create who I am today.
Sure.
So there's not like,
which is why this kid wants to go on vacation every day.
True. I want to be on vacation 24/7.
I moved like 27 times in 30 years. And so Travis like, let's go somewhere. I'm like, I've been there. I've done that.
Totally. So, but it's so important there again, what you see, your environment, and still today, like if your parents or your friends are continually doing the same things, or if you do it like a self-audit of looking at who do you hang out with, and typically they say the 5 closest people to you, you're probably within a pretty close range of the net worth or the income level with the people that you hang out with on a day-to-day or weekly basis.
Which, if you actually lean into this, there's an incredible nonprofit organization that is talking to a conversation around sexual purity. And they said something about sex and money, which is why it made me think of this, is that we as humans are different than animals. I know this sounds crazy, but animals have an instinct for sex. Like they know how to do it, that it's born. Humans actually learn how to have sex and how to deal with money, which means I have an experience that shapes me. I have a family that talks about sex or doesn't talk about sex. We hide sex, or we don't, or we're overboard on sex, right? Like we actually learn our habits for sex and money in how we are brought up. And that doesn't even mean we have sex to learn it. It means
we're getting so.
I know, but what
she's saying is money too.
We learn
by what you see,
we
right?
learn by what we see.
Yeah, modeled, or the words.
Correct.
Like one of the words that I heard growing up is, we can't afford that.
Yeah.
And so there again, that's what you experience. And so when you want something, that always pops in my head, I can't afford that.
Yes.
Even though I can afford it.
And here's what's so funny, as we're talking this out, the thing I always heard was, it'll just work itself out. Which is why I can oftentimes spend, and I'm like, it'll work itself out. It'll be fine. We'll have the money in the account. And does it work some of the time? Yes, right? Like if I think about how I show up in business, or how I show up with our budget, or some of those things, if I am not conscious, I grew up hearing that, watching it, oftentimes seeing it, and have lived it. And so it's easy for me to go, okay, yeah, we'll just buy it because it will just show up.
Yep.
It will just work itself out. And again, good concept until it's not.
Which this is so important within a relationship of talking and identifying how you grew up and how I grew up, and then how are we going to bridge that gap and come up with our money strategy. And typically in most households, you have one or the other manage the finances.
Yep.
And so like in our relationship, I manage majority of them. In like my sister's relationship, she manages the money. And so it's like, it's not necessarily right or wrong, but it's identifying and understanding of like, okay, here's how we think about money and here's how we're going to do it. And then you manage that. And then we do like a weekly or monthly check-in of like, where are we at? What are we doing? Like, are we hitting the waypoints and investment strategy, everything that we're wanting to, that we set out to? Are we sticking within those guidelines?
And here's what I love about what you're saying and why today we're actually talking about financial resiliency. And when Travis had asked me when we're talking about that word, what is resiliency? And resiliency is the ability to show up boldly and strongly no matter what is going on around us, right? Whether we're in 2021, 22, where it seems like we're just catching up to keep all the money, right? There's a lot of industries and sectors that we saw doing really well, or whether we're in 2008 or who knows where we're going next. In my mind, financial resiliency is the ability to know how to do whatever market you're in, whatever economy you're in well. And when I think about this idea of financial resiliency, I think what you just landed on is huge and simple, stupid hard, because you said we need to sit down as a family, as an individual, whoever you're doing your finances with, and ask the question, how do we think about money? I mean, that's really where financial resiliency starts. And we hit on this in the last podcast as we're doing this series and unfolding and unpacking, mastering our mind, right? And now mastering our finances, I think starts with the how we think about money. And you said this in the last podcast, which is money isn't what you think it is. So can you now give us more definition around what is it then? Right? Like if we're really going to sit here, the audience is going to sit there and go, oh, I probably need to rethink how I'm viewing money because it's not serving me. It's not getting me what I want, right? So if we're speaking to the crowd that says, I don't have enough, never have had enough, will I have enough? Or we're speaking to the crowd that says, I have everything I've ever wanted and I'm still not happy. How do I need to be thinking about money?
Well, that's exactly the point of like, and we've been there. So going back to real quick on our points of like having no money and thinking once I have a certain amount of money, then I'll be happy or fulfilled. But then you get there and then you're still unhappy and not fulfilled. And so that's the point of like, if you make money the focal point of your life, one, it tends to run away from you. And so I have experienced when I don't focus on money, but I focus on value and bringing my gifts and talents to the world and increasing my knowledge base to be able to leverage my time, I actually make more money than when I'm trying to control it and just chase after money.
Oh, man. So here's number one to write down. Focus on value, not money. Can you talk to me a little bit about, or give me an example or a visual of when you say, like, focus on money, chase money, right? When I'm only pursuing that, like, what does that actually mean? How does that show up real time? How do we know that we're doing that?
Well, I think if you're all consumed by just making money. So I'll give you an example. We know someone currently that is working 2 jobs, 2 night jobs, and he's working 6 to 7 days a week. And I think they're 10 to 12 hour shifts because he wants to make more money. And so my thought,
which, insert real quick, is fair. We're not here to say your desire to have more money is not spiritual. I really quick insert. It's okay to want more money. You got to check your motives. We're not suggesting that the desire to have more money is wrong. The mindset, the thought process, the focal point, that's where it gets dangerous. So quick insert. So keep going.
Yeah. So it's
he's
just
done that. He's doing this to make more money.
He's doing this to make more money, to go then, buy an investment. And so I don't know 100% if it's real estate or what he wants to do, but he wants to invest his money. I totally get that. But if my thought is if you work the job that you need to survive and pay your bills and maybe a little extra, but increase your knowledge and the value that you have, and you can go then invest. Here's a perfect example, real estate. most people say that I'm going to go save up so I can invest in real estate. You don't have to have money to invest in real estate. You have to have the knowledge.
The value. Bingo. Okay, so let's also now use the word value interchangeably with knowledge. So to your point, if we're talking this out, well, I have to have more money to get this. I have to have more money to be happy. I have to have more money to invest. I have to have more money. Then now I'm chasing money as opposed to chasing value, chasing knowledge. Got it.
Yep. And you can do this at a young age too. And I forget exactly what industry he was talking about, but he was giving an example about a teenager.
Who?
Alex Hormozy.
Okay.
Which is awesome. If you don't follow him, check him out. But he was talking about an example of a teenager working at a job making, $14, $15 an hour, which is awesome relative to what I made when I was $15. It's more than double. So obviously inflation is here.
Totally.
And so, but he was saying, well, there's a weekend workshop that she could go get a certification. And I can't remember exactly what certification, but then she could basically double her income. Well, it's $500. So she was going to work to go do this course, but it's going to take her X amount of time to save up for that course, as opposed to go borrow the money to take the weekend course to pay that back twice as quick and then be on the path to make twice as much for longer.
Okay, so here's what I want to break down that I think is incredible about this example is that we could continue to do what we've always done, expecting different results, and we're not going to get it. We're going to get insane. We all know that. But we do that with money, right? Which is, I'm going to just keep working this job and keep saving for a time when I finally can have more money to do the things. And we wake up when we're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, and that's not happening. Then there's the idea that I'm just going to do more of the same thing that I've always done. So to your first example, I'm gonna work my job, but I'm just gonna work more hours. I'm basically gonna kill myself to get quicker results. Could that be possible? Possibly, right? Like, yes, that is one strategy, but generally what we're starting to see is people are burning out and they're unhappy and they're disconnected in their marriage and I don't have any energy, right? And so I think that the shift here is that actually being strategic to go, if I took a couple of quote unquote steps back to increase my knowledge, to increase my value, to learn something that when I understand it and when I get it, not only do I love it and want to learn it, but it could, right, increase my value, my yield per hour, how much money I make, then what I'm doing is I'm taking a few steps back to then take 20 steps forward. And I think that's the hardest part after you get through the insanity and working harder and burning out. The next is like having the courage and the boldness and the maybe responsibility and accountability to take 4 steps backwards, to learn, to not look like you're making a ton of money right out of the gate, to then move forward, right, by light years because of the knowledge base that I gained.
Yep. And it's also, thinking of another couple that I've been talking with over the years, and it's the thought process there again is that once I have money, I'll invest. Well, if you don't have the knowledge to invest it, you're potentially going to lose all that money.
Oh, it's so good because here's what we will typically do. We'll go to the advisors, which aren't bad, but most advisors are built to what? Not help. They're built to make themselves money.
That could be a whole different podcast, okay. depending on what kind of advisor you're talking about.
I think that's fair. I think that had I not met you, thank you for Travis Gentry, I would have done that. I would have said, I need to make more money to go and invest and then give my money to someone else to let them invest for me. And I would have taken no responsibility of at least understanding how investments work. So I'm not saying that the advisors are bad, but if I don't know about money and how it works and how to think about markets and market cycles and all these things, then I don't know how to actually be in control of my money. So now I'm dependent on somebody else to do for me what I probably should be doing for myself in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there again, we could go off on different kind of paths on this conversation because it's so important to have an understanding. Do you have to know everything about everything? No, but you should have a good foundation or a base knowledge of what you're investing in if you want to be more of a passive investor. That's great. If you have money and you want to invest in real estate or if you want to invest in the stock market, have an understanding of what you're investing in. If you have the time and you don't have money, then go learn a skill because the money will follow. Like if you go invest and let's say you don't have money and you want to go make money, more money, go volunteer, go do a internship with someone that is doing what you want. Go work for free. Or if it's someone, say, I'll work for half of what you normally, because I don't have the knowledge base. But once I have the knowledge base, then you get paid accordingly. Or just say, I want to come and mentor under you. I'll work 5 hours for free a week, and I'll do whatever you want just to learn under someone that has the fruit in their life. Financially is what we're talking about.
Yes.
Because at some point, and this is the other side of it, you have money, but you're still unfulfilled. Because there is a tipping point when you have all the stuff, and that's what we experienced as well. We worked really hard. We had what we'd call the American dream, the cars, the house. We were having kids at that point. We had a dog. We had all the things, but we were completely unsatisfied and unfulfilled. And that's when we had our midlife awakening, and we head out in the RV the first time. And this was 5-6 years ago, because it's understanding that money is not going to be the fulfillment. Tony Robbins says it. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And we experience that as well.
Yeah. And I think that what we overlook is that, I think that we have the safety, security, stability needs, and money is a part of our deficiency needs, which once I have a certain amount, we all kind of have a different range. Once I have a certain amount of safety, security, stability, money included, I don't need more to feel more fulfilled. It's almost like vitamins, right? Like I take vitamins, and whatever my body needs, it clings onto, and whatever it doesn't need, it pees out. Same thing, right? Like money, yes, is going to serve a purpose to help me meet my certain needs, but it's not going to actually help me actualize or meet my full potential or do any of these things, because it's a deficiency need, not a growth need. But I think you hit on 3 things that I think all of us, from how do we position ourselves in this next year? How do I position myself to be more financially resilient if I don't have money, right? I think you hit on 3 things that even the Bible talks about, in the story of the talents, when they come and he gives them 2 and 5 and 10. The idea here is, first and foremost, we're given what we can manage and handle. God's not going to break us, right? Sometimes we're like, why wouldn't you just give me more money? Because it might break you. I think about who we were when we were bringing in our quarters for more wine. Had we had more money at that point, I would have been a woman who would have bought the most expensive thing of wine. Why? Because I was not of sober mind, right? I was still chasing money. And I would have been spending more than I was making then too. Why? So God knew at that point, don't give them more money yet, not because I don't love them, but because I do love them. I'm not going to give you more that's going to break you. And so I think that as we start to think about money is actually a value play, then it's going to come back to 3 things that all of us, no matter who we are, has one, if not maybe 2 or 3 of all these things, which is I have time, to your point. I have time that I could go learn a new skill or do something or volunteer or be mentored or something. I have resources, meaning I do have extra money here that I could invest, that I could take a risk and start the new business, that I could give back, I could do something. Or it's our talent, which is that unique value proposition that God's put on the inside of us to write the book, to build the business, to love that industry, to do something. Like we've been given talents that are our responsibility to do something with, right? Like all those 3 things, all of us have one, if not 2 of those things. And I think that we overlook the power of our God-given talent, that if we refine it, it would make room for itself. Right? That's the value thing. If we all have a certain amount of time and we all have a certain amount of money, and then it becomes, all right, what's most important then? And that's what I would encourage anyone listening, which is identify which one of those you're going to rock at this next year. Am I going to rock at my talent? Am I going to rock at my time? Or am I going to rock with the resources that I have and then crush it? Rock it.
100%. I mean, and I think we've seen this really huge shift over the last couple years. And I think the uncertainty that happened in 2020, the beginning of 2020, and then now we're going through another shift. Yeah. And so I think that there is a lot of uncertainty of what is going up or going on, what is going up and what is going down. We have no idea.
It's like a Dr. Seuss book.
And I think 1 minute, for an example, like the stock market, 1 week or 1 month it's up and you're feeling pretty good, and 1 week or month it's down and you're like, oh no, I got to sell everything, or, you go into fear mode. And so I think ultimately, like, you've got to just understand like where we're at and position and prepare, because I think that what did work last year won't work next year.
Yeah.
And I do believe that there is a changing of a tide, and what has been going on with the tightening cycle, and we won't get in the weeds of that, but we're not going to see the full effect until next year.
Yeah.
And you've got more and more big corporations and companies laying off people. Mm-hmm. Well, when people don't have jobs, they spend less and they potentially need to sell their home.
Yeah.
And so interest rates are at an all-time high, or relative to the last 20 years. And so you're seeing a lot of pressure on the real estate market. You're seeing some of these corporations come out and with their projections of saying, like, it's not as good as what the media is saying.
Yeah.
And so I think it's ultimately just looking and understanding, like, we are going into a new season financially. And I think it's now is a great time to look and say, what skill could I acquire or start to pursue that would position me for where we're going?
Okay, so that is it. That is it. And I actually just did a video. I'm actually going public with this year. 2023 is the year of the dream. And what I mean by that is it is about a certain group of people. I'm going to call it thousands, hundreds, hopefully hundreds of millions, that decide that I have to be ready and positioned to bring the most amount of value to a world that needs it more than ever before, right? And I think that you're in my mindset right now is two things. We keep checking in on this on a daily, most of the time weekly basis, which is prepare for the worst, right? Like, make sure that you're enough ducks are in a row that if things get kind of weird, that you have what you need to be okay. Now, this isn't the like, oh, the end of the world is coming and Jesus. I have no idea. Just prepare like it's going to get bad. And then take a few risks as though the potential of the impossible is waiting for you. To your point, refine your talents and actually acquire the skills that are going to be needed for you to go where you've never gone and do what you've never done. And I think the complement of both is what we need to be considering right now.
Yep.
And not just to work harder right now, and not just to put in more hours or to kill ourselves. And I know that there's people out there right now that are doing side hustles and all these different things, which I think works until it doesn't, right? Until you're exhausted. And I love the idea of saying, all right, here's our base, like here's what we have to make sure that all of our needs are going to be met and ducks are in a row. And instead of just going and working more hours or just grinding it out, what if I took those hours and strategically started to focus on the areas that would exponentially grow my value, identify my talents, help me to attract more resources? Like that is what I feel like is what is going to be necessary as we move forward.
Yeah, and I don't know who said it, but opportunity comes to prepared people. And I think now is the time to get prepared, and you can start to see there's lagging indicators on where we're going. And so I think that now is a great time to do a self-audit, a financial audit, like what you're talking about, and looking at where are you at. If it does get a little, crazy and, you do lose your job, like what do you have? Do you have 6 months in savings? Do you have kind of a emergency fund? And then what are you learning now that if you did lose your job or something that you want to transition to, or a side hustle, but a side hustle that is profitable, strategic, profitable in the way that you want it to be. Not just a side hustle to make a quick extra couple bucks. It's a side hustle that could position you next year.
I love that. A side hustle that could position you, right? And I think that maybe there's two audits that we're suggesting then. Do the self-audit of your finances to make sure your bases are covered. And if they're not, what I would encourage you, if you were like me, that was always a fear zone. It just struck a fear zone in my body because as a kid, I grew up being so afraid that I wouldn't have my needs met. So I think if you get to that point that you're like, I don't want to, I'm scared, I'm afraid, I like physically am nervous, I hear you. And the only way out is through. And so we have to look at the areas that we're like, this is not good. And we have to start moving into how can we make it good? Not, oh crap, this is not going to work and we don't have enough money and going into scarcity. We need to ask questions that are going to go, okay, this is not good. How can we make it good?
Yeah.
How can we lean in? What do we need to cut out just for the time to actually kind of get an equilibrium and have the self-audit that positions us to like do okay, even if things aren't okay.
Yep.
And then the second audit is the talent audit, right? Like, what do I need to learn? Who do I need to become? How do I need to think about the world? What has God given me? My unique talents. Like, if their personality profile is great, if it's where you call friends and go, tell me what I'm amazing at, that I just seem to do so naturally and I make it look easy. Or like, call your parents and go, what did I do as a kid that I just found myself, I just was doing all the time that you didn't have to tell me to do or not do because I just did it. I think that that's how we could do a little bit of our audit to take accountability for the gifts and the skills that God has put within us.
So looking at what I'm hearing you say and saying out loud for myself too is like, what do you think about money? Like, what are your programs? What are your experiences? How did you grow up in your environment? And then what does that look like now, whether you're single or in a relationship? And then where are you at financially? And then where do you want to go? What is your plan? Whether you're in your 20s, 30s, or your 50s, 60s, like, what is your plan? Like, have a plan moving forward, because it's a lot easier to sleep at night when you have a plan.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that can be a little daunting for those of you who have never done that before. That would have I would have leaned that way. So, and still can, because I'm still a little bit of this visionary. I can see it before it's possible. I still have a little bit of the residue of it'll work itself out. It always does, right? So when I hear you say that, can you speak to the person that feels like that is so daunting to think of a financial plan when A, I've made them and they don't work, right? The quote unquote don't work. Or B, how in the world do you even create a plan when we are at least tuned in enough to go, we don't even know what the world is going to be doing. How do I make a plan for this? Can you speak to just any question mark in there?
Oh man, we could talk about this for a while. I think ultimately it's just writing down, it's like a financial scorecard of where you're at. Like, most people don't, they just go, they're like, okay, they check their bank account and they're like, okay, I've got $500 and I've got $375 going out this week, so I've got enough.
Yeah.
Like, that's their plan.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, like, here's where I'm at, and do I want to make more? Okay, then it goes back to where do I need to increase some value to be able to make more?
Okay, bingo. So that's where it is. I think it's going to be an invitation to sit with reality and then to dream. Sit with reality and then go bigger. Sit with reality, and now don't just ask what is the goal. Ask, who do I have to become? What do I have to learn? What do I need to know? Who do I need to know? Right? Like, it's an expression of an abundance play, because God is bigger than the problem. There's people who have overcome this. There's strategies that can change it. Right? Like, there's an abundance of resources to answer the question if we're just willing to ask a question that's going to move us forward as opposed to keep us where we are.
Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately that's where most people, they avoid it. I mean, finances, there again, I think is in the top 1 or 2 of the reason why people get divorced is because they fight and argue about money, because they don't understand, like, here's how I grew up, here's what I think about money, here's how you grew up, here's how you think about money, and then we're colliding those two, and they can be polar opposite, as opposed to saying and sitting down and saying, here's the baggage I'm coming with, good or bad. Here's the baggage I'm coming with. And then you just going through it and saying, okay, how do we think about money? Yeah. Or if you're single, how do I think about money? Here's what I heard, but I've also heard this other side too. So what are the new vocabulary, the new words that I need to learn to be able to start to go in the direction and grow?
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, just like working out. You go to the gym and you're lifting 5 pounds and you're looking around, they're lifting 50 pounds. You're like, this is awful. Like, this is no fun. I feel bad. I look bad. And so same thing with financially. It's like, yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable and awkward if you've never done it before.
Yeah.
And so, but it's so important, because you'll understand at some point when you put in the work that once you get there, that hopefully you increased your value in the right way, that there is fulfillment. because you can work, grind, and make money and be fulfilled. And you're like, why did I do all that? What was the point?
And I think so many thoughts around that. Number one, embrace the awkward. Embrace the awkward, because you're right, it is awkward. As a couple, when you start talking about money or sex or these hard, it's awkward. It's awkward conversations. You're not going to do it well. Come back and revisit it again and do it awkward until you do it well. Where we'll land with this today is that I think that this is a little bit of a call to arms to go, how you think about money matters, right? The Bible even talks about this. It's not money that is evil. It's the love of money. It's the motive behind money. And I think that what this is calling all of us to go, hey, we all have time, talents, and resources, right? And it's all interlinked to a value play, and knowing who we are and what we have, right? What's given to us in our hand, and using money as an expression to share your value with the world.
100%. And we just did vision boards, and we did a podcast on that, or talked a little bit about that. But on my vision board, I have that I want to give a certain amount on a weekly basis. Well, in order for me to be able to give that amount on a weekly basis, I have to increase my value, my knowledge base, my skill, to be able to make more so I can give more. Because that's fulfilling. If I can hit that goal and give that amount, gives me goosebumps right now. If I can give that amount on a weekly basis, then I know that I'm accomplishing something greater than just more money.
It's so good. And that's where to the point of the quote, success without fulfillment is ultimate failure. When you have both, it's like, it's bingo.
Yep.
It's game over.
Yep.
So join us for bingo. That's what we're asking. Join us for bingo. We encourage you to lean in, do a self-audit, do a talents audit, sit and do awkward conversations with yourself, with your spouse, with the people that are in your world doing your financial game, and join us in rethinking money for a little bit more financial resiliency. Until next time, dream on.
On behalf of both of us, thank you for listening to another episode of Dream On. Don't forget to visit our website, The Dream Factory & Co., for all the show notes and other tools and resources to get you unstuck, clear, and helping you reprogram your thoughts and beliefs so that you can live out your dreams with a community that supports and challenges you. Until next time, dream on.